Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Rati here. So guys, today I'm going to review The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. And it's a pretty famous book. A lot of you might have seen the movie as well. So today I'm going to review this book by John Green, The Fault in Our Stars. The Fault in Our Stars is a story about cancer kids. I don't want to reveal the plot as such, but I'm just going to give you a little bit context of the book. So it's a story about cancer kids and their life stories, their life struggles. More than their life struggles, really, the focus of the book is on the sort of normal, usual life of cancer kids, that how the outsiders generally look at people. They stereotype people who are perennially sick, people who have terminal illnesses. These so-called normal people stereotype such people in a certain way, and always look at cancer kids, look at people suffering from cancer from the prism of their illness. Everything they do, from the way they sit, the way they eat their food, the way they interact with people around them, literally everything is looked at, is viewed at from the prism of their illness. So the book, actually, I think that's the most important achievement of this book. The Fault with Our Stars completely tries to break the stereotype and preconceived notion about people, especially about teenagers with terminal illnesses. So you have two prime protagonists here. The main protagonist of the book is a girl called Hazel, who is suffering from cancer and is in a pretty advanced stage of a certain kind of cancer. Hazel, the book is written from the point of view of Hazel. So the entire book is written in the first person narrative, and it's Hazel talking to the readers and explaining to them her life story, talking about her life story, and it's interspersed with dialogues, and then she's telling you about people in her life and the people she meets, which includes other cancer kids, but also sort of the usual circle of family, friends, etc. So the other main protagonist in the book besides Hazel is Augustus, and Hazel and Augustus meet at a cancer support group. Augustus is also suffering from cancer, and they end up falling in love with each other. So even though it might seem like a cancer book, the way the book has been promoted and the way probably a lot of YouTubers talk about this book, but to me, more than a cancer book, it's a beautiful love story. It's a beautiful love story between two people, between two teenagers, who are living their life very intensely, and of course, their illness plays a part in it, because they don't know what's going to happen next, and their lives are, every moment that they lead is very precarious. They want to live every moment with complete intensity, and it's a very unusual kind of love story. But what I'm trying to say is that the fact that their cancer kids has a bearing on it, but that doesn't explain the whole story altogether. These are just like your usual teenagers who want to lead a normal life just like any other teenagers, outside the whole gaze and the whole talk about cancer. It's a very heart touching it's a very heart touching novel, very heart touching narrative. I've read it two times, to be honest, and since there is cancer, there is illness, so there's of course a lot of grief in the book. There's a lot of pain, and there is death as well. When the story essentially revolves around cancer case, then there are deaths also happening. So the first time I read this book, I was actually quite disturbed, to be honest. I did not cry as such, but the book did disturb me, sort of a great deal, and it kind of shook me, and it disturbed me so much that I couldn't get to, I couldn't get myself to watching the movie, really, because to read a book and to sort of experience those emotions, and to sort of uh, kind of to sort of read the book and digest the reality of those illnesses is a different thing, but to actually see it on the screen in visuals being repeated is a different thing altogether. Because when something is repeated visually, something which is so sad, so traumatic, and yet so inspiring as well, when it's repeated in visuals, I think it becomes even more difficult to sort of bear, because it's visuals are striking, visuals are sort of really intense in your face. So I couldn't get myself to watching the movie. The second time I read this book, of course, because I knew the story and everything, so obviously I wasn't really sort of so emotionally hit as I was the first time. So that's the reason I read it the second time, because then I could also, analyze the book from a neutral angle. I haven't really read many cancer books, to be honest. So I cannot really, I'm not the person, I'm not well equipped enough to sort of compare it to other cancer books and then tell you how original it is. But for me, it's a very original book. It's, maybe the story of Cancer Kids is not very original. Maybe the trope is sort of, kind of time worn. But what stands original for me is the treatment of this book, the way Hazel and Augustus's love story has been narrated. And one of the most remarkable things that stands, in this book for me is the fact that there's also this whole, sort of, there's this very subtle satirization of this whole industry, this whole motivational industry that is spun around, cancer and, many other terminal illnesses, So when Hazel and Augustus are talking, or when Hazel is talking to, other cancer kids, be it in the cancer support group, or, just talking to sort of, her friends in general, they are many times they can be seen making fun of this whole thing about this whole thing about sort of cancer kids, talking about how they survived and connecting with God and this and that, and inspiring other people. They all these kids go to this cancer support group. That's where Hazel meets Augustus, like I mentioned. So at this cancer support group, they are supposed to tell their stories and reaffirm their faith in God, and a lot of that typical motivational stuff they are supposed to go through. And the book clearly gives you a picture of how these teenagers find these meetings, these cancer kid meetings, very phony, and they find them completely fake and artificial. And they have this feel that they're being exoticized and they're being fetishized as cancer kids, and they're not being allowed to just lead their normal lives. They just want to be like normal teenagers, just just having fun, studying, partying, bonding with friends, going on dates, having boyfriends, girlfriends. They don't want to be this sort of perennial picture postcards source of inspiration as cancer kids. So it actually makes you this subtle satirization. It's evident, it's there throughout the book, and it sort of really makes you reflect on the whole industry of abject commercialization of many diseases, and the way people suffering from these diseases who have survived, the way survivors are dragged onto the stage by NGOs, and repeatedly sort of their sufferings, their sort of trauma, and their so how they overcome it. Everything is so abjectly commercialized. So this offers sort of an insider's perspective on on how an insider feel, a person actually having a terminal illness, how they feel if the outsiders are all sort of commercializing that disease as, hey, you're so brave, hey, you're so courageous, and sort of this and that, you're a survivor, bravo. But they fail to realize that for a person who's living with a terminal illness, they want a life outside of that, right? They don't want you to just talk about their illness all the time. They don't want you to identify them with their illness. They just want to be treated like a normal human being. So for them, even if you're sympathizing with them, even if your intentions are good, this whole tone is very patronizing. So this particular aspect about the book I found, sort of very interesting, that through the characters of Hazel and Augustus, the author has created really intelligent characters who are sort of, questioning through their witty dialogues, through their witty conversations, they're questioning this whole crass commercialization of, this cancer, this motivation industry, inspiration industry, if I might call it, surrounding a disease like cancer. Now, coming to Hazel and Augustus's love story, it has all these elements of teenage romance, and how they're sort of initially attracted to each other. So, all those typical tropes of teenage romance are there, but their story is somewhat unconventional, not because of their cancer, but because of the fact that they're, highly intelligent teenagers, and, the kind of sophisticated language they use, the kind of arguments they have, the kind of conversations, the kind of books they're reading. They're always talking about discussing literature and philosophy, and those kind of topics which are generally considered heavy for a teenager. And usually, I don't think you hear, sort of teenagers speak like that. So for teenagers, their personality does come across as a bit incongruous, but it's also interesting, to find like such intelligent teenagers having a conversation with each other, and, sort of slowly falling in love, and these affections and bonding growing over them slowly and slowly. I think that's my personal sort of take on it. One of the reasons why probably Hazel and Augustus are so intelligent for teenagers is because because of their illness. They have a sort of a restricted life, so they're not going to college regularly like other typical teenagers, and they're not probably also socializing so much outside. Obviously, they're homebound most of the time, and then they go to these meetings. So they since they're homebound and they don't have that kind of typical teenage social life, so I think books form a major part of their routine, reading books. And that's why I think sort of they probably spend a lot of time reading books, and that's what perhaps explains the kind of philosophical mellowed down undertone which seems very different from your usual teenagers. But it's not that like they completely sort of mellowed down and being explored through the prism of the illness. That's the most beautiful part of the book. The love story of Hazel and Augustus is so overpowering, and it's so amazing and natural that like while going through the pages, you somehow just forget, that they're actually terminally ill. Of course, the sort of, the story reminds you of that premise again and again, which is what makes this book, reading this book, such a mixed roller coaster emotional ride. So it's not like, it's not out and out a sad book. There's a lot of fun moments because there's a lot of satire. And these kids, the cancer kids, are satirizing their own illness. They're laughing at their own illness all the time. And one of their friends, when he has to actually go blind, one of his eyes has to be taken off because of his cancer to save his life. It's so traumatizing, and it's so sad if you think about it. But the way these kids are talking about it, they because for them these terminal illnesses are a part of their lives, so they make such light of it that the reader also gets absorbed in their worldview, and you forget about those illnesses, and you kind of get absorbed into the worldview of the teenagers. So I think that for me is the most important thing in the book, which stands out for an outsider, an outsider, for so-called normal people. It's a kind of an eye opener that when you meet people with terminal illnesses, if you have friends or acquaintances with terminal illnesses, then they don't really need your, overt sympathy. They don't need anything like that. You just have to connect with people like normal people, irrespective of what their state in life is. I think that's the most strong, that's the strongest, that's the most prominent point that comes out through the book. Hazel and Augustus, more than anything, they just want to be treated as normal teenagers, and they don't want everybody around them to carry the burden of their illness, which of course, their parents are supposed to do that, which is what makes them so sad and melancholic, as well, because they think that, the parents' whole life is sort of wasted in hovering over them, in hovering over their existence, taking care of them. So the parents cannot have sort of like, an independent existence. So there are, of course, these moments, when their mind goes very heavy, and, they're talking about death, and sort of melancholy takes over. But those moments are immediately interspersed with, lighter moments when they're having these fun conversations. And then Hazel and Augustus take this trip to Amsterdam, and that's in like, sort of the most suspensive part of the book. I don't want to reveal the plot, so I'm not going to tell you what actually happens. But yeah, so that's pretty much about it. And just one more thing I wanted to mention before I wrap up the review. For me, what also stands out is the prime protagonist, the heroine of the book, so to say, Hazel. And I think it's a wonderful, wonderful female character that the author has created in Hazel, and he deserves full marks for it. So in Hazel, you find a very unusual sort of teenage female character in Hazel. And for the first time, when Hazel and Augustus meet each other in the support group, she is immediately, drawn to his like very stereotypically good looks, but he is drawn, more than her looks. He's drawn to, sort of other dimensions of her personality, the way her eyes are looking, and how rebellious and unconventional she seems like, and most of all, how intelligent and witty she seems like. So you have this train throughout, where it's literally like they're making out through conversations. So Augustus is, bowled over by Hazel's intelligence, and they exchange these books. They read each other's favorite books. Even though their taste in books is completely different, but they make it a point to read each other's favorite books. And Augustus goes out of his way to even communicate with the author of Hazel's favorite book. So this kind of intellectual flirtation, which is there, and the way Hazel's character has been constructed as somebody who is very creative, very original, very sensitive, very empathetic, and it's a very unconventional and sensitive, female character. Somebody who is looking at her own illness, sort of analyzing her own illness neutrally all the time, but is also philosophizing, the whole suffering which eventually everybody must go through. So everybody has to go through the cycle of death. It's not just that, because they're cancer kids, so they have to die. Everybody has to die. It's just a matter of who will die sooner and who will die later. So I would certainly recommend The Fault in Our Stars to you. It's a beautiful book, and emotionally heart touching story. Even if you have seen the movie, I would suggest that you should read the book. The book will definitely give you altogether different vibes as compared to the movie, I think. So guys, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you like my review, please do press the like button, and please do subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for listening. Bye for now.